one thing I really want to talk about is about the George Harvey thing, because for trout fishing, he really had a major impact in this country on it, and on trout fishing in general, really.
What did Lefty Kreh teach them? What did they learn from Lefty Kreh?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm going to live long enough to do that. I'm on borrowed time right now. All righty. Send me the stuff. I love you.
All right. Love you too, Lefty.
Bye, pal.
Bye for now.
One time in Wall Street, not long ago, maybe a year ago, and I'm sitting there with 4 billionaires and 6 multimillionaires, and they're having a Lefty Kreh luncheon. And I'm thinking, how did I get here, you know?
A child of the Great Depression, World War II veteran, and hard-working family man, Lefty Kreh was from what Tom Brokaw called the greatest generation. However, few could match Lefty's greatness.
I believe that every field of endeavor has somebody who rises above the ordinary. Lefty is that, as a fisherman, as an angler, as a companion.
He just casually, he's telling a joke and he throws it and the line just goes and goes. And I thought, what made it go? And I said to myself, that man knows something that the other 100 of us don't know.
Lefty may well be the greatest total outdoor package that ever wandered the earth.
He was our Tiger Woods of fly fishing.
Lefty Kreh's story is the story of modern fly fishing. He rose to the top of the sport while at the same time creating and improving almost all aspects of it, from tackle to technique.
Kreh has done more for fly fishing than everybody else combined.
He wanted to move the sport forward and make it better than it was when he first came along.
He broke away from hundreds of years of tradition, developed an entirely new method of casting a fly,
You could be damn good at
and
this.
changed the sport forever.
I think it's important that we always remember who got us where we are.
The first few decades of the 1900s were marked by economic prosperity. The 20s were roaring, and the country was growing quickly. Frederick, Maryland was an important crossroads for commerce, but it was still a small town surrounded by woods, water, and fertile fields.
My name is Lefty Kreh, and I was born in 1925, just before the 1929 Great Depression, where virtually everybody lost their job. People on Wall Street were selling apples. And in 1932, my father died from an accident, and my mother had 4 children. At 6, I was the oldest. And we had no other recourse. We just were put on welfare. You didn't get any money, but they would select the house and pay the rent, and you had no choice in where you're going to go. And they rented one for us in a ghetto. And I grew up with these kids, and they're the ones that gave my name Lefty.
Poverty leveled the playing field in the poor neighborhood where the Krehs grew up. Whether your skin was brown or white, no one had money. But they had sports, and Lefty's athletic skills were well known. He got the nickname Lefty from being ambidextrous. They also had the streams and woods, which provided fish and game for the table to supplement the welfare food.
I lived 5 miles from the Blue Ridge Mountains, 8 miles from the Potomac River, 3 miles from the Monocacy River, which was a pretty good sized river. And then the countryside was all rural, so there were all types of streams that you could wade, catch smallmouths, rock bass, sunfish, and so on. It was fabulous. So we were almost every boy was a hunter and a fisherman from the time he could drag a gun out or a fishing rod. We had the outdoors and we used it and we grew up in it. And luckily there weren't no iPhones or other things to interfere with what we did.
You know, people don't realize what a all-round outdoorsman Lefty really was. He's thought of as a fly fisher, which of course he was, but he was an incredible marksman and instinct shooter of shotguns. He was a professional crow hunter. He was a professional trapper.
I mean, he was out there catching fish and doing things like that to make money to help feed the family, for crying out loud. I'm a kid this big.
We didn't have enough money to buy mosquito underwear, so when I got to high school, my mother said, you know, if you can get enough money for your clothes and your lunch, you can go to high school. But if you don't, you're gonna have to go to work.
He would get up in the middle of the night, set his bush bob things for catfish. He would go down and harvest them. He would sell them to a market, a local fish market or something. This is, he's like 10 years old. He said he would sell, I got 10 cents a fish.
And so I got enough money for high school and actually was kind of a fat cat there.
There's something in his chemistry, his makeup, there was something in here and up here that was different from most of us. And it's a lesson for us, you know, we're all dealt different cards, it's how you play them.
Today, kids go to summer camp, but for the Krehs, it was Lander on the Potomac River just 15 miles south of Frederick. Uncle Hen, who later became Lefty's stepfather, had a cabin and boats there, and for someone like Lefty, who was born to water, it was heaven. Here, Lefty refined plug casting for smallmouth, learned the finer points of carp fishing from the locals, and mastered the skill of poling a boat by the time he was 8.
We had no idea what a paradise we were in.
Through life, Lefty would often return to Lander. While Lefty was still paying his way through high school, Germany invaded Poland, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and the United States was officially at war. As soon as he turned 18, Lefty enlisted in the Army.
And the war came along, and we left. 16 million of us went to war.
After a year of basic training at Camp Shelby, he set sail for France, where the Battle of the Bulge, one of the bloodiest battles in military history, was at its height.
Toward the Reich frontiers, Americans advanced. Against the ports hugging the channel, garrisoned in force by desperate foes, Canadians were sent. And in a thunderous sweep, the British armor surged toward a waiting Brussels.
He'd grown up under tough conditions with no comforts, so the brutal cold and damp, the constant threat of frostbite or trench foot was tolerable. He was not prepared, however, for the unimaginable atrocities in the concentration camps he helped liberate.
I don't know any words big enough to make you understand what we all felt. As I say, I'm not squeamish, but, well, I'm human, and thank God for it.
I used to have dreams about that for years after I got home from that thing. It's hard to believe that humans could do this to other humans.
After earning 5 battle stars, Kreh was home on leave in summer of 1945 when the bombs fell on Japan and the war ended. Kreh soon found a job at the Army's Biological Warfare Lab at Fort Detrick.
Not very far from Edgewood, in historic Frederick, Maryland, are the Biological Warfare Laboratories. Here, men and women of science are doing basically the same type of work as in other government.
Clad in a biohazard suit and breathing through a tube, Lefty routinely scraped anthrax slurry from the tanks, and in the 1950s was one of 3 workers who contracted anthrax. The other 2 died.
Through a series of controllable valves and a face mask, it was possible to expose a person in each cubicle to a measured volume of biological aerosol from the sphere.
His fingers swelled, his arm turned black. He was quarantined for a month.
What I found out was that when I got anthrax, they were able to isolate that out of me. And from then on until I left there in '74, I was in charge of the BVK, Bernard Victor Kreh, BVK strain. And that's what they're still using to work with today. And I never knew that I was growing my own strain of anthrax.
Despite the obvious workplace hazards, Lefty recalls this time fondly, as rotating shift work allowed him ample time during the day to hunt and fish.
At first, I was unmarried. I think the first 5 years I was at Fort Detrick, I probably fished more than most do in a lifetime.
With a flexible civilian job at Fort Detrick and no family obligations, Lefty was able to spend huge amounts of time doing what he loved most, hunting and fishing in the Blue Ridge Mountains and along the Monocacy and Potomac. It's no surprise he was becoming well known in the area as a crack shot and expert angler. And he was also about to land the catch of a lifetime, though it remains unclear who set the hook.
We had a real little tiny theater called the Tivoli Theater. 1947, I went there and with 2 friends of mine, 2 fishing and hunting buddies, and we bought tickets outside this little booth and went in, and the usher took their 2 tickets, so it wouldn't take mine, and I said, why not? And he said, this is a children's ticket. And I said, by God, I said, I bought an adult ticket, and I went storming out to this booth, and here was this real cute blonde in there. We got to talking, and she had deliberately sold me a children's ticket so I would have to come back and talk to her. Somehow I asked her if I could walk her home. 6 months later, we were engaged, and a year later, we were married, and I don't know how it all happened yet, but...
The same year Lefty met Ev, his life was about to change again when he met Joe Brooks, who was a columnist for the county paper in Towson, Maryland. He had heard of a hotshot bass fisherman from Frederick and phoned the young man to arrange a fishing trip together.
He said, I'd like to come up and do a column. And so he came up to Frederick, and we took my canoe, which was a growing balloon canoe, down to Harper's Ferry in the Potomac. Joe walked down over the bank with his tackle, which I had not looked at. And I carried a canoe down, and Joe was stringing up a fly rod. I looked at this line that Joe was using, and it looked like a piece of rope. Mr. Brooks, I said, if you don't have a flow rod with you, I got an extra one. And he said, well, do you mind if I use fly tackle? And I said, oh, no, but I said, it's pretty windy. It was about 12 miles an hour. And so he rigged up. I had him in the front of the canoe. I really couldn't see well what he was doing, but I could see he was catching fish. We had lunch on a bunch of rocks that slanted upstream, and I went back not long ago and took a picture of casting on that same rock. We ate our lunch, and then Joe walked up to the top of the thing, and here were all these little rings out there, and I said to Joe, what are you gonna do? And he said, well, watch. And he put a little black and white fly on, which I now know was a black ghost, and a ring appeared. I actually thought they were minnows. He dropped that thing in the ring, caught a bass. Another ring, caught another bass. He did this 8 or 10 times, and I finally said, Mr. Brooks, I got to have me some of this.
The very next day, Lefty drove to Baltimore in his Model A. At Tochterman's Sporting Goods, Joe helped him pick out a fly rod outfit, a South Bend rod, and a Pfluger Medalist reel, and then shared what he knew about fly casting.
Joe gave me my first fly casting lesson, which was a typical English way of doing things. But when I came home, there was nobody, incidentally, that knew anything about it. There were no books, there were no videos or anything. You kind of had to learn from each other or by yourself. And I knew from plug casting that the longer I swam that lure through the water, the better the chance was of catching the fish. So this was kind of limited in my casting. So I began to move the body back and take the arm back to change the technique completely from what is normal even today. And that got me started, and then I went on from there.
Lefty was doing crazy things. I mean, that was all different thinking. His arm would come straight back to the rear. That was something people didn't do at that time.
Tradition's great as long as it don't interfere with progress, and I was never a traditionalist.
Lefty applied his problem-solving skills to fly tying as well. Learning to tie flies became a necessity because, as Lefty recalls, no one sold any good ones. He would soon develop his own flies, such as Lefty's Bug and the Deceiver, which is such an iconic fly that it was printed on a postage stamp in 1991. It became both a fly box standard as well as a template for many patterns that came after it.
I may have been writing for a while and head's all fuzzy, or I've been a little bit upset about something. If you come in and tie flies, it's like somebody shot you in the arm with something. You just relax.
Lefty was sharing this new sport of fly fishing and fly casting with a core group of friends that he fished with regularly. They'd make frequent trips to the Potomac for smallmouth, as well as trips north to Pennsylvania for trout. One of his fishing companions at the time was Henry Decker, editor of the Frederick News Post. Constantly impressed not just by Lefty's knowledge of the outdoors, but his simple, easy-to-understand explanations. One day he asked Lefty if he'd be willing to write a weekly outdoor column.
almost everything I have, I eventually modify. And I came up with all kind of innovations, and he was impressed with that. And I'd also gotten up to Life Scout and would have got Eagle, except I went in the Army. And I was intensely interested in the outdoors and wanted to know what every tree was and bush and how it affects each other and all that. Well, I got a high school education, and I said, I don't know how to write. He said, well, you put down the information and we'll edit it for you.
Maryland Afield, which featured Lefty's straightforward, practical how-to advice, was very different from the Me and Joe fishing stories common at the time. It launched Lefty's prolific writing career. He would write countless columns for newspapers and magazines over the years, ranging on a wide variety of hunting, fishing, and outdoor topics, all with Lefty's signature pragmatic style. He was quick to realize that learning photography would help him sell more articles.
Nobody in the writing business was submitting photographs. If it was a bear story, there was a painting of a bear charging the guy or something like that. I was doing almost all how-to stuff because I didn't know all how to do that pre-writing. And so I would have these tips and tricks and all these photographs that I would send along with my manuscript. So they were delighted because they weren't going to have to pay for an illustrator and everything. It really helped me get it on the inside.
In addition to writing, Lefty was also traveling the country as much as he could, sharing his tips, tricks, and photos through slideshows, clinics, and casting exhibitions. His travel schedule was grueling as he was still working at Fort Detrick. But in addition to bringing in extra income, the clinics and slideshows allowed him to learn from the locals wherever he went, which provided more material for his growing number of columns.
My car mechanic's smarter than me. He can start my car when I can't. But I am intensely observant. And I fished in 22 countries. Somebody said I'd caught something over 100 different species of fish. I never kept records on any of that stuff. But I do know this, whenever I went fishing anywhere, whether it was local or in New Guinea or New Zealand or France, I was observing everything they did so that I could report that back in my writings. I was sort of the funnel that it went through, but probably 90% of what you read that I wrote, somebody else taught me. You don't learn all this by yourself.
By now, Lefty was a trout and smallmouth expert, but still he didn't have a lot of saltwater experience like his mentor Joe. Local trips to Crisfield, Maryland for striped bass inspired his deceiver fly, and in 1960, he caught his first bonefish, a large one, when he traveled to Cuba to cover Hemingway's marlin tournament. On that trip, Lefty spent time with Hemingway and Castro and fished for numerous species, including largemouth bass at Treasure Lake and bonefish along the coast. Lefty's saltwater repertoire, however, was about to expand, with another fateful call from his mentor, Joe Brooks.
He called one day and said, Lefty, how would you like to be the manager of the Met tournament? And I said, Joe, what's the Met tournament? And he said, well, it's like being the mayor of all South Florida fishing. He said, I think I can get you the job.
Within a radius of 100 miles of Miami, Florida has every depth, color, and type of fishing water. From the deeps where lurk the giants of the sea, to the 2-foot-deep flats of the Florida Keys, fishermen try their skill at everything from sail fishing to bone fishing.
Every year, hundreds of thousands of work-weary and fun-seeking tourists flock to Miami Beach.
At that time, Miami was a beautiful city that Hollywood used to take pictures of Biscayne Boulevard, and the fishing was just unbelievable. There were only maybe a dozen guides in the whole Florida Keys, and it was kind of a mecca for saltwater fly fishing and bass fishing.
Fly rod whiplashing the air in beautiful rhythm, Joe makes a long, long cast. In seconds, the well-placed lure is taken and a bonefish is on. The first sizzling run of a bonefish is almost unbelievable. It's electrifying. It strips off line at top speed. The fish heads for the channel, goes deep, and cuts the line. Well, would have been a nice one, but you can't get them all. Let's move on and see if we can raise another one.
We just were not ready to accept him at any level. We didn't know who Lefty was. He was a little short, bald guy from Maryland, and he was replacing somebody at the tournament that we all knew and respected. And Lefty came to a club meeting of my club, which was the Bahamas Sport Fishing Club.
Guy got up in charge and said, well, now I want to introduce you to the new manager of the Metronome, Lefty Kreh. And he's going to show us how to fly cast. Real sarcastic like.
We could cast a little, but we were not fly casters. We were just using fly tackle to catch wonderful fish.
I had no idea they didn't know how to fly cast.
It wasn't a real friendly, welcoming crowd for Lefty.
I had to really do something special.
There was a guy sitting in the front row, had a fly rod in his lap, and Lefty excused himself from the podium and walked down and asked this guy if he could use his fly rod for just a minute.
I just extended her arms forward like this, and I had a guy hold my rod, and I walked off about 60 feet of line. Then I came back, I laid the rod on the ground, I picked the line up, and I cast 60 feet with my bare hands, and every one of them stepped forward to see how far it went, and I knew I had them.
When I saw that, it made me realize what was possible, what could be. And I knew in that moment that whatever that was that this man knew how to do, I had to get there. And so as soon as he finished and the club went on about its business, I ran over to him and latched on to him, and I latched on to him for the next 50, 60 years. Lefty's home became the university of saltwater fly fishing for me and my friends, such as Paul Brun, Norm Duncan, John Emery, and Chico Fernandez. Lefty was not only fishing locally as much as he could, with people like Vic Dunaway, Lefty Reagan, Lee Cuddy, Stu Apt, Jimmy Albright, Homer Rhodes, and Steve Huff, but he was also traveling extensively, and he was sharing everything he learned with all of us. During his time off from the Met, he hosted groups of anglers at premier and newly developing fly fishing destinations around the world. And he could come back and share what he discovered. It was a magical time, a perfect storm of innovation, energy, and world-class fishing. And Lefty brought the lightning. He was constantly on the move, and as he was exposed to these different fisheries, he landed, saw what was important, saw what was interesting, saw what was needed, produced it or invented it, and made friends everywhere that he went, around the globe. He was our internet. When Lefty left and moved back to Maryland, all the magic went with him. Lefty left the Met in 1972 and served a short stint at the St. Petersburg Times, and then in 1973 moved back to Maryland to take a job with the Baltimore Sun. That same year marked the beginning of Lefty's prolific career as a book author, with the release of Practical Fishing Knots. 1 year later, Fly Fishing in Salt Water and Fly Casting with Lefty Kreh were both published. To write just one of these influential books would have been a crowning achievement for any writer, but Lefty was just getting started. The author of over 30 books, Lefty Kreh has written on almost every subject in fly fishing, from trout to tarpon, inspiring countless anglers to fish for a wide range of species.
He always felt like it was important to understand all aspects of fishing, not just fly, but conventional, but also just understanding all the different types of fish that are out there, from saltwater to freshwater, warm water to cold water, and all the different fish in between. Because if you know a little bit about all these different fish species, it's going to make you a better all-around angler.
Lefty loved all fish in freshwater and saltwater, and he loved the environments in which they swam.
Everyone tends to think the environment around them is pretty much the way it was. But in the 90 years of my lifetime, there's been an enormous change in our environment, and we lost a lot.
His commitment to the natural world had an enormous impact on conservation groups such as Trout Unlimited and Bonefish and Tarpon Trust, who jointly established the Lefty Kreh Memorial Conservation Fund.
We have a tagging program ongoing. If you live in the Keys, you know that that's been ongoing for about 10 years. We've now expanded that to be Caribbean-wide.
He was looking out to the future and inspiring others to look after, not just getting a rod, but like, is there going to be something there to catch? Where do these critters live? How are we treating their habitat, the water? What can we learn about them? He had everything to do with it, but he wasn't saying, name this after me, do this for me. Let's do this together.
Everything you do with a rod in your hand, in my view, is cumulative. Between bone fishing and trout fishing, there's incalculable cross-mogenization. That may be a word.
We have to live with our environment, not abuse it.
Lefty's mentored many of the sport's top anglers and fly tyers, leaving a legacy far beyond skills. He instilled in generations the same values of conservation, humility, boundless curiosity, and sharing that guided his life.
I get more joy out of helping people than I do trying to figure out how I can use them. I've never done anything for anybody and wanted anything back. And I think people sense that. And I never did any of this to become famous or well-known. Or all I ever did was I wanted to share the knowledge I had.
And he was the ultimate sharer. He wasn't showing you what he could do. He was showing you what you could do. And that's what he did for me, and that's what he's done for countless other people.
If he saw something in you, if he felt like you were in it for the right reasons, he would do anything he could to help you.
He introduced me to so many people. He took me places. He opened doors for me. He was always a forward thinker. He had always supported women back to the day of being a coach for the basketball team for the girls at the Catholic school. So there was always that coaching kind of personality that he had, whether it was with a fly rod in hand or on a basketball court.
If I can coach them and help them and watch them catch their first trout or catch their first bonefish.
Make the rod tip travel in a straight line.
It's like I caught that first fish again myself.
When Lefty first met Kathy, he made it very clear. To me, he said, she's got unbelievable potential. So he called her over and he said, Kathy, I'm going to tell you something. He said, there are people who share knowledge and people who display knowledge. And he said, you're going to be a person that's going to help people, and you're not going to try to promote yourself doing it. You're going to help them. And if you do that, I'll be your friend forever. And I thought that was great advice. They just clicked. I don't know what it was.
You're just standing on the shoulders of those that came before you. His shoulders are so broad, and he's had so many people that are disciples of him. And I'm forever grateful for that. He changed my life.
In 1992, Lefty retired from the Sun to a schedule busier than ever, writing books, scores of magazine articles, consulting, traveling, and continuing to teach.
Is that if you throw at the tip of the rod, try to make the line hit the end of the rod, you're making all the energy unroll away from and back to the target.
When most would have slowed down, he picked up steam, writing a magnum opus on fly casting, filming a fly casting DVD, and appearing regularly on the TV show Buccaneers and Bones with avid fly fishers such as Tom Brokaw, Jimmy Kimmel, Michael Keaton, and Huey Lewis. They were the ones starstruck. A day on the water with Lefty was unforgettable.
What can you say about Lefty? I mean, Lefty is the legend. He's our rock star here at Bucks and Bones, and just a world full of knowledge, you know.
Years ago, when Tom first met Lefty, it was amazing when he said, of all the people I've met and all the people I see and all the people I interview, he said Lefty Kreh blew him away more than anyone else.
I don't think that you can improve on him as a human being, and certainly not as an angler.
You know, he's an American treasure, and he's just a really sweet guy. I mean, the jokes never stop. We got more troubles than a pregnant nun.
Lefty's quick retorts, one-liners, and, well, Leftyisms are legendary. They made him not only a memorable and effective teacher, but a cherished companion.
He had hundreds of them.
I think Yvonne's trying to teach him to swim, but he already knows how.
He has one guy he doesn't like. He said he has as many friends as an alarm clock.
If you're looking for sympathy, this is the wrong place. Your paint don't dry.
They got streets aimed at you. They call them one way.
He's so dumb he picked up a snake to kill a stick. You and I remember when men wore tattoos and women wore the earrings. He's tougher than a bad mother-in-law. You just remember, love is blind and marriage is an eye-opener. You want to get to know somebody, you spend a couple of days fishing with them, and you will find out what kind of person they are.
Every day was like the first day. He just loved the process, and the process started with the alarm clock in the morning and ended when he hit the sack at night.
You haven't watched your casting all morning. It's okay, but it's inefficient. Look at the tip of the rod.
Right.
I'm trying to make the line hit the end of the rod. You know what an improved clinch knot is? Yes. This knot's much stronger than improved clinch knot. But here's how quick you can make this knot. Knot's tied.
I got a curly cue.
You screwed up, that's what it was.
If you're looking for sympathy, this ain't the boat to be in.
He's been a great inspiration, let me tell you. He's the best. He's so alive and vibrant.
He's so full of energy, obviously, and still learning. And that's the lesson there for all of us.
His excitement for fishing, he was like a little kid. You know him.
God, how excited he would get.
It was like the first fish he ever caught, every one of them.
Lefty got the pattern. That's a nice bass. I enjoy so much just being here.
Slow. Got him.
Oh,
Oh, no, he's gone. That's all right.
And to me, more than 90% of any fishing trip I take anymore is the person I'm fishing with and the environment I'm fishing in. And less than 10% is how many fish we catch.
It's not just about the trophies, but it's about trophy memories. And that's a lesson from Lefty is take time to laugh, take time to be happy, and it's really the memories that really matter.
It wasn't about catching fish at all.
The bronze sculpture of him forever casting in Color Lake, not far from where he grew up on North Bends, honors a great man, the sport he loved, and the place of his youth, which he always kept in his heart.
No matter whether he fished with Jimmy Carter, the Bushes, whoever flew him on a private jet, he traveled all over the world. And he came from Frederick, Maryland, this little tiny town, poor, and he never forgot.
For Lefty, memories are the monuments. For in the end, what do we fish for, if not for the recollection of days that make us feel youthful again? Days so vivid, they continue to rise in our thoughts and bring us peace.
I have a high school education, and I came out of a ghetto and never expected anything wonderful to happen. But fly fishing made it possible. I've been lucky enough to fly on a Concorde and go over to the hardest stream, the richest stream you can get to, and yet those days on the Potomac River were absolutely even more enjoyable because of the solitude, and it's something that brought back. I've been so lucky to have fished so many wonderful places.